Hey, what's up guys, Mashin here, come back with a brand new video for you guys. Today we're going to be talking about what's going on in the case market right now and what on the horizon has going to be potentially impactful to that. Now the first thing I want to focus in on is what happened in the last video. In the last video, we talked about how our overall case deficit was starting to grow once again, almost making its way back up to negative 200,000, but now it's starting to increase. And that's exactly what we're seeing here in terms of the prices. If we want to switch over to our prices here, as you can see, cases are starting to go back up in price once again, and we'll talk a little bit more after a quick word from today's sponsor. The sponsor for today's video is Loot Farm, a CSGO trading site that's been in the scene for 5 years and is specifically designed to get you the most value possible. Now all you have to do is log in with your Steam account and they're going to be giving you a $5 subscription for absolutely free called Trader Plus. And if you don't have any skins to trade, there's no need to worry. They're going to be giving you a 25% deposit bonus or a 30% deposit bonus if you're using crypto. Now Loot Farm likes to keep it exciting. That's why they have a random chance for you to score a bonus of up to 5% of your skins trade on every trade. They support CSGO, Dota 2, TF2, and Rust, and they've got an exciting auction feature which you have to check out. So why wait? Check them out with that top link in the description and grab that gift that's waiting for you. Now this is quite obviously something that we are wanting to see if we're invested into cases overall. If we want to look at some of the very recent increases, something like the clutch case is up a very significant amount in just the past 5 to 7 days whenever you grab your different times. But that's a very significant increase considering we've seen a decent amount of time of stagnation for a lot of cases. And it's definitely not just exclusive to the clutch case or some of these overall cheaper-ish rare cases. If we want to look at something like the Spectrum 2, we're starting to see movement once again, and there's a lot of different cases this is happening, which is very good for investors, but it definitely raises some questions for people who aren't invested of what the future might hold. And we'll talk about that in a quick second. I want to focus in on the active numbers that have just recently come out for the month of May. Now, if we want to look at our unboxing numbers, we can see it's roughly consistent with what we saw in a past month, other than obviously the Anubis collection package being very prominent here in May, as this is the first full month we've seen unboxings be able to take place for this. Now with that being said, this does seem to be an underestimated month. If we want to look at the day-to-day unboxing chart, it'll say March on the bottom. I went ahead and calculated it is the correct numbers, but you can see there's 2 specific days where we saw really low unboxing numbers. And if we want to head back to a past video of mine, we talked about how this new era of unboxing numbers is completely different than the old era. That's because Valve has gone away and changed their rates of how you can do things, which affected CSGO float and in turn affected the amount of pure data that we could get for the unboxing numbers. And that's exactly what we see here on these 2 dates. So just keep that in mind when you're looking at these numbers, that it's very possible they could be slight underestimations because of those 2 days or potentially some other days, depending on what you really think the unboxing number could potentially be at. And the last thing for unboxing numbers, if we want to take it to the monthly graph, you can see here I've went ahead and plugged May 2023, and this is not including the Anubis package because other than April, most of these months don't have the Anubis package, and I think it throws it off a little bit. As you can see, it's sitting roughly equivalent to what we saw in March, which is honestly, in my opinion, a pretty decent deal. Now there's one thing I want to say when it comes to one specific case. That's the fracture case. In my opinion, I really think you should be avoiding the fracture case as of now unless you really know what you're doing. That's because the fracture case has been one I have consistently been seeing a lot of people talk about the very, very large potential with it. And it's in the active duty pool. It's obviously got potential when we're talking very long term, but these people are spitting off a lot of inaccurate information that I really want to correct. The first thing is they're saying it's very likely to go into the rare drop pool next, and that's because it's the oldest. But that logic doesn't really fly if we want to look at something like the clutch case. Valve looks at unboxing numbers a lot more than they do specific length that something is in the active duty. Like we mentioned, the clutch case was sitting in the active duty pool for almost 5 years. Now let's look at unboxing numbers because most likely it's going to be the fracture or the snakebite that is going to go next. If we want to look at unboxing numbers, fracture has been dominating over the snakebite in the past couple months. Obviously not by the largest margin, but we also don't really see either of these 2 cases being the weakest. If we want to look at some of the newer cases are actually being unboxed significantly less than what we're seeing these 2 cases right here, and that's because those newer cases are a little bit more expensive. I doubt that we're going to see a change in the drop pool very soon for these 2 cases. Potentially we might even see a 6th case added, which has happened before, and honestly at this point I wouldn't say it's that unlikely. The next question I've been seeing a lot of people ask is if this is now the time to sell, because we're going to be talking about the Paris major in a quick second, and specifically the sale, and if that's going to just absolutely tank this market. Now, when we're talking about selling, you really need to realize what you're selling for, because if you're selling for no reason and you don't specifically pick out another time or item or what you want to do with the funds to get back into the game, you're going to end up looking like this, where the market continues to go up, potentially if you pick the correct items, and you're just overall stuck with the same amount of capital that you had when you sold off. It's not a bad idea to sell off, and honestly, selling off is a very crucial part, but you need to have a plan before you sell off, and I think that's what a lot of people are not doing, at least at this point. Now, focusing in on the Paris major sale and the impact it's going to have on the market is quite unknown. This is because we don't know how long the sale is going to last, we don't know how many people are looking to invest into it, although we definitely think it's a high number, and most importantly, we don't know if this is something that's already priced into the market, if the market has already seen a lot of people who want to sell, or if we're seeing a lot of people waiting to sell. This is why it's very important that you come up with your own decision, but I want to focus in on specifically what has happened in some past majors to give you at least some sort of insight as to what has happened. Now, if we want to look at a little bit of a cheaper case, something like the Spectrum 2 here, you can see that the Stockholm major actually had a larger drop than the Antwerp major. Now, if we want to talk about these two specifically, we can obviously see that Antwerp had many more investors than the overall Stockholm major, but that's not the only thing that comes into it when we're seeing a decrease in price. We can see that both of them did have a decent sized increase in price a couple months beforehand. Stockholm's was a little bit more artificial, as we saw a lot of people flocking to the Spectrum 2 case there, and therefore they also had the option to sell off a decent amount of them. Whereas if we want to talk about Antwerp, Spectrum 2 case was a little bit more developed, so it's not 100% the greatest outcome. If you want to look at something that's a little bit older, like the Breakout case, maybe a better example for you, we can see that once again it was actually the Antwerp that had almost no impact on the overall Breakout case. You can see how that trend was pretty much continuing on an upward trend after the overall Stockholm major had concluded. This is something that I want to make very important, is it's not 100% guaranteed to see a massive drop just because there's a large amount of people looking to invest into a specific item. I'm not saying it's going to be or it's not going to be, but it's something that I think is very crucial for a lot of people to understand, that just because there's a lot of investors doesn't mean that every other item is going to drop. And I've also seen some questions about CS2, what would happen there, and I think that's overall just going to be a net positive for pretty much every market, just because we're going to see most likely a sudden influx in the amount of players, people looking to spend money on the game. I think it's going to be more beneficial than anything else. And finally, talking about what specifically should you be doing in this situation? Well, obviously there's a split path. If you're looking to sell, I don't think selling is going to be a bad idea, but once again, you need to know where you're putting that funds. On the other hand though, if you're looking to buy in, it definitely depends on what you're trying to buy in, but buying into the case market right now may not be the worst idea, judging off the information we just looked at with some of the past major examples, how we saw these cases continue to go ahead and be consistent in what they do. Now, obviously cases do drop back down, and that's something you're definitely going to have to take the risk on when you're looking to invest into this specific area, but generally speaking, cases are going to be one of the more safe investments compared to something else. You're most likely not going to see the massive drops that we saw with Stockholm and Antwerp happen with cases, because it's just a completely different market. With that being said though, I want to thank you guys so much for watching, and I hope you have a great rest of your day.